Hello, welcome to IG. It's a big week, of course. The grind up continues ahead of those Nvidia results, which will be key in a quiet week like this. Joining us now to talk about this is Chris Versace, CIO of Tematica Research. Chris, thanks so much for joining us all the way from Washington. I mean, there's a saying, isn't there, a spin-off from the line from June, he who controls GPUs controls the universe.
I think there is something along those lines in this world that seems to be increasingly leaning into AI and data center, but we'll see. I mean, I think you're talking about Nvidia's earnings, that we'll get Wednesday after the close. A lot of expectation, both for the quarter itself and for the guidance. Between the two, I think we've heard a lot about some big tech companies as well as smaller companies kind of leaning into AI and data center. I think that's going to set a very good base for Nvidia's earnings. But this earnings season that we're wrapping up, we've seen companies give good guidance, and sometimes guidance isn't good enough. And I think what Nvidia has to do is not only deliver a great quarter, they've got to deliver guidance that is ahead of expectations. In other words, a pristine beat and raise. And if they don't, those high expectations, which includes a fresh round of price target increases this morning across Wall Street, it might leave some people wanting. But my position on that is if we see Nvidia's shares sell off, it could very well give some folks another bite at that, dare I say it, Angeline, apple.
Chris, just before we talk more about Apple, Nvidia shares, just taking a look here. I mean, the growth trajectory of the shares, the price action is pretty impressive. And from a technical viewpoint, it's still firmly in the upward trend. But as you rightly say, it's all about the outlook and what it says about, new products, new things coming online soon in terms of data centers. There's also rising competition from the likes of Intel and also AMD, and even Apple themselves have said they're developing their own chips. Do you think we could see that Nvidia will be dethroned soon, or do you think that it's in such a dominant position that it's going to stay, king of this area for some time?
So I think we need to be a little careful when we talk about various chips. There's, with NVIDIA, AMD, the question is, are we talking PCs? Are we talking data center? With Apple or Qualcomm, are we talking smartphones or PCs? So I think we really need to be careful here. NVIDIA, of course, doesn't play in smartphones. They don't really play in mainstream PCs. So we're really talking AI and data center focused. And as we know, they are relatively, sold out through the balance of the year. So I think they're in a very strong position. And I think the way to think about it is we're still in the early stages of AI and AI adoption. I think there's going to be a continued rising tide that's going to lift a number of boats, but I do see opportunities elsewhere, particularly with AI on device and that upgrade cycle for PCs and smartphones. We'll hear more about that, I think, tomorrow when Microsoft holds its Builder conference. I think we're going to hear the CEO follow up on his comment from earlier this year that 2024 is the year of AI on the PC. And then, of course, we've got Apple's event, WWDC in June. And there's some, chatter out this morning. I think Bloomberg has it that Apple and OpenAI are inking a partnership to bring OpenAI's technologies to the next iteration of iOS. So I think that's going to address some concerns for Apple. But make no mistake, Angeline, it's going to be a big week for AI.
Chris, you've also got a thematic model called Chips Act. It's hard to kind of like avoid the issue of this U.S. Sino tit for tat. We saw your U.S. President Biden recently announce significantly higher tariffs on everything from cars to chips. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I don't think it's going to have tremendous impact on our CHIPS Act model. I say that because the strategy behind that model is really the reshoring efforts that are going on for semiconductor capacity. So it invests in companies that build semiconductor capital equipment like Applied Research, Land Materials, those sorts of companies. And yes, we are seeing the flow of funds from US CHIPS Act, but we've also got efforts in the Eurozone, Japan, and other countries as they look to reshore and kind of bring capacity back out of China. So I think the tailwinds for that model are extremely strong over the next several years. I think what you're talking about might have greater impact in certain other areas of demand where chips may not be as available coming into the U.S. and we could see China retaliate. We have started to see them kind of push back on companies that were selling to the likes of Huawei and others.
And given we're in, other than Nvidia, a pretty quiet week where the market's still in this melt-up mode, are we likely to see any waves created by the Fed speakers? And also we've got those PMIs in view as well. I know that they're usually seen as, not as key, but in a quiet week with Nvidia, will the market place more emphasis on these sort of reports and comments?
I think it will, and I say that because the market was very excited over the progress it saw in the core CPI reading for April that was out last week. But soon after, there were a bunch of Fed heads who kind of pushed back, saying, "Look, 3.6%, quite a ways from the 2% target. We're going to need to see further good data as we try to get even more comfortable that inflation is not giving us yet another head fake, that we are going to see continued progress." So to me, that says that we really do need to watch the flash May PMI reports out on Thursday morning, looking for not only what it says about the speed of the economy, but the comments on input, output costs, in other words, inflation.
And I know it ain't over until the fat lady sings, but some banks, including Deutsche, have come out saying 5,500 by year end for the S&P 500. Do you think that's, on the mark or slightly off or slightly under?
I think it's going to depend on a couple of factors. First and foremost, is the economy going to stay, growing above trend? So far, it seems that that's the case. What are the prospects for a rate cut? If we listen to the Fed heads, it seems like they're still thinking late in the year. But if we see inflation data soften, is it possible that it gets pulled ahead? And if it doesn't, does a rate cut get pushed out to the first quarter of 2025? So I think those are going to be some of the issues that will determine whether or not we do get to 5,500, maybe even 5,600.
Right, thank you very much, Chris Versace there, CIO of Tematica Research, all the way from Washington. This is IG's Trading the Markets.